All right, okay, so welcome to council committee. We do have a post-agenda item to add, so I think maybe if council's willing, just because Madeline's gotta be zooming in, maybe when she gets here, we'll just, whatever item we're on, we'll finish that one and then we'll let that item on, which is the county land use bylaw. All right, so we're adding that, we just don't know what order. We'll wait and see how that goes. If everybody's okay with that, we can get right into it. So, Alicia, you're up. Oh, Dan's got your hand up. I can see it. Sorry, Dan.
Could we add one more item to the,
Oh, we sure can. What do you want to add?
just a brief comment on the cardboard pickup?
Cardboard, sure. Okay, we'll add that at the end. Okay, anything else to put on the agenda here? So, the LUB, I'm just gonna leave and we'll just pick that up. Well, Madeline's here now. So are we okay with just doing that item first and then Madeline doesn't have to stay? Is everybody good with that? Okay, so, the post-agenda item was sent to you under a separate email. Does everybody have that with them? Okay, excellent. All right. All right, I'm going to turn this over to Madeline then, if she's up and ready to go. There she is. Okay, Madeline, we're going to accommodate you this morning, so go ahead and if you're ready to go.
Can you hear me all right?
We can, thank you.
Okay, sorry, just having a light situation here that, in my office. Okay, so thank you for fitting us on the agenda last minute here today. The reason for this is because we were at public hearing with the County of Newell to review their updated land use bylaw last Thursday. So we wanted to have a chance for council, obviously, to see the changes that they've made. So this memo provides some background information just about the timeline at the beginning of what we've kind of gone through. And I won't really go into detail on that, just noting that we received a new version of the land use bylaw with a number of changes to the uses and things like that in the agricultural general land use district. And as a reminder, the county is intending to remove the fringe district and redesignate lands to agricultural general, their new agricultural general land use district, which the city has noted that there were concerns with uses. And we've talked about that at the Intermunicipal Development Plan Committee meeting. So I just want to go back to what those concerns were that we stated, and then I'll just go through the new land use bylaw that they provided and how the county has addressed or not those concerns, and just ask council, pose some questions, and then we can see where council wants to go with next steps. So on page 2 of the memo, there's an updated table here that shows the uses from the old fringe district and then the proposed agricultural general district, and uses that are highlighted in green were discretionary in the fringe district and they're now permitted in the agricultural general district, and uses highlighted in yellow were not allowed in the fringe district and are now discretionary. So this is a lot fewer uses than their previous version of the land use bylaw. So the first concern noted by the city in the public hearing comments to the county is that the fringe land use district has been functioning well for the city, and that converting lands to fringe district, from fringe district to the proposed agricultural general district, could ignore some of the impact that activities could have on an urban municipality. And once again, we were basing this on the Intermunicipal Development Plan, which states that a goal of the plan is to discourage the widespread fragmentation of agricultural land and to prevent the premature conversion of agricultural lands within the Brooks urban fringe to non-agricultural uses. And of course, there's also policies within the IMDP that specifically reference the implementation of the plan through the fringe district in the county's land use bylaw. So we felt that the removing it right out without more discussion was not in keeping with the IMDP. So the county has I'll just summarize their comments. They've made the decision to remove the fringe district because they felt that it wasn't serving a purpose anymore. They have created a subdivision authority bylaw that received first reading on Thursday and does restrict subdivision past the first parcel out within the IDP areas of all urban municipalities without a concurrent redesignation application or ASP submission. So basically they took the subdivision regulations out of the fringe district and put it into a separate subdivision authority bylaw. So those are no longer in the land use bylaw like they were before. In general, they are matching up or covering the same direction. Previously, it's a little more less detailed, I guess, than it was written in the fringe district, because in the fringe district it highlighted it by type of farmstead or vacant parcel and made it really clear what the rules were in each of those cases. And they've kind of summarized that down and removed some of that descriptive information. So in general, the policies are the same, but it might be a little less clear to interpret. So I'll just keep going through and then I'll pose the questions to council after. But second thing noted, obviously a big issue was the changes to the proposed permitted uses within the IMDP plan area. So the city noted a number of uses that were listed as permitted that weren't in the fringe district. And of course, it's of concern when they're permitted uses because they're not referred to the city, and the county is duty bound to issue a permit if they comply with the land use bylaw. So that was agricultural building, agricultural processing, agricultural regulated, small wind energy system, and utilities. And just a note on the agricultural piece, previously under the fringe district, the use agricultural operation was permitted, but it was defined differently than the processing and regulated agricultural uses that they've added. So that old use did not include feed mills, grain mills, abattoirs, ammonia storage, or fertilizer plants, which are part of the definitions for agricultural processing and agricultural regulated. So the county's response to that in their updated version was to remove agricultural processing, agricultural regulated, and small wind energy systems to discretionary uses. And they did want to keep agricultural building as permitted. They stated that this is defined as a building or structure associated with agriculture or grazing, including corrals, stockpiles, haystacks, grain bins, and barns, and that it's the feeling of the county that these types of development fall in line with the IDP policies in preventing premature conversion of agricultural lands. And they want to streamline that process for the applicant to not have to go to MPC for that type of development. And then utilities are defined as the systems or works used to provide service, such as potable water, including reservoirs, sewage disposal, waste management, waste transfer facilities, or storm systems, as well as the buildings that house a public utility. So these types of developments will likely be limited to the County of Newell or the City of Brooks, and the county doesn't foresee the need to circulate that. So we're just seeing today whether council is comfortable with those uses being permitted, utilities and agricultural buildings. So those other ones have been moved to discretionary. Also of concern to the city when we wrote our comments was changes to proposed discretionary uses. So most of these uses would require different servicing than typical agricultural developments and potentially request services from the city, which was a concern, and not really the type of development that was contemplated in the fringe when the IMDP was created and could therefore have a negative impact on the city. So that was animal health inclusive, care facility for a child care facility, hotel/motel, industrial light, kennel, pit or quarry, school, and solar panels freestanding greater than 56 meters squared. So not an individual solar system for a home or anything like that. So in response, the county removed animal health, care facility, hotel, motel, industrial, and school. They took those completely out of the agricultural general land use district. For the kennel, comments on the kennel, they stated that they feel that rural areas adjacent to urban municipalities are the ideal location for a kennel to be developed. So they listed it as discretionary so that the IDP committee could still have the ability to provide comments. And there are some regulations that guide kennels. The parcel size needs to be 1 hectare, and there's a 300-meter setback from any facilities and buildings on other parcels required. As for the solar panels, they stated that this was discussed at the IDP meeting and that there was concern from the city about the boundary being set to 500 meters from the municipality. So there was a discussion about what would be an acceptable setback distance, and 1,000 meters was suggested, and they stated that that was agreed upon and that they've reflected that in the new land use bylaw. I just wanted to state that I was at that meeting, and there wasn't, it was more of a suggestion from one member. It did not necessarily receive consensus, and it was not a recommendation of the IDP committee what that distance, that distance should for sure be 1,000 meters. And then for their comments on, further comments on solar panels, and sorry, that last comment was related to pits and quarries. For their comments on solar panels, they state that they've seen over the past 6 years that industrial scale solar is an acceptable use in the IDP area surrounding the city of Brooks because they require the applicant to obtain AUC approval before applying to the county. When they come for their land use redesignation, they forego the public hearing anyway because the AUC has already dealt with that public consultation portion. So they felt that redistricting to a rural industrial in order to accommodate these larger solar projects was just a formality at that point and caused the applicant further delays. So once again, just looking for direction on whether we're comfortable with kennels, pits and quarries, and those larger solar panel projects remaining as discretionary uses, and if there's any suggestions for regulating them further. So that's really the main comments that we had and the responses that the county provided in their updated land use bylaw. So basically today, the first thing is to say, are we still okay with that fringe district being removed? And then if so, though, is the way that they've outlined these new uses going to work for the city? We can have a few options. We can accept the county land use bylaw as they presented at the public hearing and provide them comments to this effect. We can request additional changes to the county land use bylaw. Process-wise, it's a little bit confusing at this point because the county council closed their public hearing. So this may require that we request more time for review, request a return to first reading, or request that a new public hearing be held or posted prior to second and third reading. And of course, there's also the options to pursue dispute resolution either through the IDP policies or Section 690 of the MGA. The county council has stated that they want to put this back on their agenda for second and third reading on the September 23rd council meeting. So I know that was a lot of information to throw at you, so I'm happy to dive into more detail of any of it or answer any questions that you have.
All right, so let's start with questions first. So we got Norm, go ahead.
I'm still concerned about that pit quarry. And the concerns that I have on the pit quarry, and this is a situation that I'm familiar with, not anywhere in Alberta, but in BC, that when a pit quarry came in, all of a sudden there was truck traffic early in the day that disrupted citizens immensely. Plus there was a situation wherein the truck traffic also had to go through residential areas to travel through at early points in the day. And I'm thinking that a pit quarry should not be in close proximity to the city for those types of reasons. I think that is a situation we're in. I think a pit quarry should be like miles out of town, not meters out of town.
Thanks, Norm. Any other questions? Comments? Go ahead, Dan.
You know, there's a lot of different things going on in this land use bylaw that they're proposing, and they seem to me they're trying to rush it, have us rush it through. I personally think that we as a council should have a special meeting. We asked them to hold off before they do their second and third and give us time to properly review this and go through it step by step, because I just don't feel we can do it justice today. That's my opinion.
Okay, anybody else have anything? John, go ahead.
Yeah, I just had a question on the pit quarry thing. Isn't there one on Highway 36 in Castles Road? Now, would that be grandfathered in there then? Is that what happens on that? Or is that one still existing? What's that?
Yeah, I believe that one's not in the urban fringe district. The current urban fringe district. Any other questions or comments? I have a few as well. But Dan, I think we have to be prepared for multiple, multiple outcomes here. If they refuse, or, we have to be prepared. So I think we should discuss some of these things a little bit more in depth today, just so Madeline and Alicia have a bit of a sense of how to prepare for the next steps. So I'm very curious myself about, they moved, in the existing fringe district, they actually allow home-based businesses, if I'm reading this right, home occupations, right? One anyway. Now they moved all home-based businesses discretionary use. So under the proposal in the IMDP, because they're redesignating the lands as agriculture versus urban, in the referral area still, so any home-based business, we're still gonna get those referred to IDP, are we not?
Yes, so they've moved home-based business type 2 into a discretionary use, but my understanding is that for a home-based business 1, they do not require a permit.
Oh, I see, they've completely removed it completely. Okay. So I guess the thing that I'm curious about and how they respond is that where was the slowdown in any of this stuff? Because I don't recall it. I've been on council since 2010 continually, and I don't recall any development in the county being unduly delayed by going through the process that we've had with the urban fringe district. And I'm a little bit concerned about when, particularly on the permitted uses, a gravel pit or a quarry, 100% agree, they shouldn't be allowed in the urban fringe or the referral area, whatever we're calling it now, or whatever the new piece. What is the proper, is it a referral area again, or what is it going to be, the area that the IDP piece?
It's still called the Fringe District in our IMDP.
Okay.
I think they're just taking that terminology out of their land use
Right, and
bylaw
applying.
and using the
Yeah.
IMDP as the way to do the referral process.
So it's actually a bit kind of unnerving that they don't recognize that this area should be treated differently than the rest, because while we want to preserve it as agriculture as long as possible, the fact that they're kind of refusing to consider it differently is a bit flies in the face of the original agreement, which was in fact to make sure that that is well-planned area and doesn't create conflict by a lack of planning. And when I see agriculture building, which, I'm not worried about non-permanent structures like grain bins and things, but let's face facts. If we put a large agriculture building, even if the original intention was just to store equipment in, and we have a 30,000 square foot building at a very disadvantageous location, and now we have no say whatsoever in that process because it's permitted. So I don't understand their thinking. From a process perspective, I do understand that overlaying a current district over top makes it easier for them. But the fact is that I do not know of a single development that's been unduly delayed that I can recall. And I've been on the IMDP as long as I've been on, for 6 years anyway, and I don't recall any other one. And everything else that's allowed in there creates a potential for conflict, not just between land use and current residents or future residents, but it also does create the opportunity for conflict between two jurisdictions of government that could take these matters all as far as they need to go in order to deal with them. And I'm kind of disturbed by that. I think we should, the land use bylaw, particularly in the area that we're sharing, planning should be set up so that we can collaboratively work together. And the fact that they're kind of completely not allowing this is flies in the face of that. So, you know, the specifics aside, a solar panel is, yes, they have their benefits. However, I don't think that if they were, according to this, they'd be discretionary use in this entire zone. There are probably some areas that I know this current council and me for sure, and I'm sure a future council would take exception to where that was actually going to be put. So I'm not quite sure. From our perspective, I think all of those things still ring true. And I don't even mind getting into it as far as, you know, they said agricultural building refers to this, and I don't even mind putting exceptions in there if they want to speed some of the pieces up. I think we all would feel the same about that. But to set this bylaw up to create conflict doesn't seem to make very much sense to me. So I think I'm back to what are our options, and that we must be prepared to move on all three options. So maybe Alicia and Madeline can tell us, and maybe perhaps to Dan's point, maybe there has to be a political outreach from us to discuss that at that level as well. But I know process-wise, I think we need to be prepared to deal with all of these. So Alicia or Madeline, do you want to go ahead and see what we need to do to make that happen?
I can start and I'll let Madeline add into, but basically they provided us 2 weeks in order to take these changes back to our council so that we would have a better understanding, obviously, of how the city wanted to move forward with it. So they were requesting to take it for second and third reading, but have offered to meet with city staff at any point before the 23rd to discuss any other concerns that we have. So basically, Madeline and I can arrange a meeting with the county staff and explain that that our council is still concerned about removing the fringe districts specifically and the uses that they haven't removed from this new ag gen. And then steps beyond that, I'll let Madeline take over that part.
Thank you, Alicia. Thanks. Yeah, I think one thing to note here, just to explain from the county's perspective, their process. Because of the election, just creates some complications with timelines, as you're likely aware. So they basically, technically, they should be re-advertising a public hearing in order to take in any new information from the surrounding municipalities or any public or anything like that. In order to do all those steps, to re-advertise and do a public hearing, it might be difficult for them to do that before the election. Since they've given the land use bylaw first reading already, if they don't complete second and third reading before the election, they have to restart with the new council, because you cannot do first reading on a bylaw with one council and then complete the readings of the bylaw with a separate council. So I state this all just to say that if we want more time than really what they've offered here, which is not very much time, then it might require a broader discussion about basically, like, you're going to have to wait to do this, like to do these readings until after your election. I guess what I'm concerned about is that Alicia and I have gone to these meetings with the county, and we haven't always received assurances about what will or will not change. And so then it's difficult to put our trust into what that version is going to be that will end up being approved at the next meeting. These steps prior to the public hearing are an example. We, had the IMDP meeting. We were told, okay, these concerns will be brought back to our council to discuss. We didn't hear anything further from them until after we'd submitted our public hearing comments, and then 2 or 3 days before the public hearing receive a new version, which is with changes on every page. So that is not really adequate time to review or to get feedback from our council. So I just provide that information to just explain some of the challenges. That being said, we can, Alicia and I can definitely meet with them and state these are still the concerns and see what their response is. If they don't want to change some of the things or are not open to further discussion, then they would be moving forward to second and third reading. And then I think at that point, the dispute resolution process would be through section 690 of the MGA, which provides an option for municipalities who feel that another municipality has adopted a land use bylaw or something, a statutory bylaw that has a negative impact on them, to go through remediation process. There's also a dispute settlement process outlined in the IMDP, just about bringing stuff, basically that the committee, that this should be brought forward to the IMDP committee, and both sides should have an opportunity to get together any of the information that they need to have a proper discussion, and that their administration can understand all the facts, and then they discuss the issue with the intent to seek a solution by consensus at the committee meeting. And if they're unable to arrive at consensus, then they contact the appropriate chief elected officer to arrange a joint meeting of the two councils who will discuss possible solutions. And then if the councils are unable to reach a solution, then that's when you go to Alberta Municipal Affairs. So that process is outlined in the IMDP. Obviously, that's something that can't happen in a week. So I think there is some decisions to be made around how council wants to proceed with this. If we end up just going to a meeting with administration and we don't get the outcome we want, then what is that next step that council would like to take?
Okay, so it I think that's the first step. Like, it seems to me, Alan, I know you can help us out here a bit. First step should be for staff to go back and say, look, this is not acceptable. And I still, and maybe this requires a different, I still don't understand, I really don't, that the urban fringe area as defined has not created, did they give you a list of issues that it created? Because I haven't seen any. I haven't read about any, I haven't heard about any, and I certainly haven't seen them at our table. So, Alicia?
My understanding from what the county has told us, that they feel having it listed as the fringe district in their land use bylaw doesn't make sense, because they feel that the IMDP should handle these matters. So they want to put it under a district that fits into their land use bylaw, and in creating that district and creating the uses, they're trying to reduce red tape for applicants. So if you want to put an agricultural building on your lot, it does not have to go to MDP or their MPC, and it does not have to go to the IMDP. So you really reduce, just like we did with our current land use bylaw amendments, so that less applications go to MPC, they can be approved by your development officer, and they can be processed a lot faster. So that was their intention with picking the district, picking the uses, and their feeling, and they discussed this about with Brooks and with the other municipalities in the region, is that the IMDP should be addressing the intermunicipal issues and not their land use bylaw. They want to have the IMDPs rewritten so that it addresses any concerns on, he mentioned like servicing, because that was one of the things we talked about some of the uses, and the allowance of some of these specific uses and any restrictions on them. They want to incorporate in the IMDP and not in their land use bylaw.
So in terms of structure then, if the IMDP deals with these more granular things, is that a normal practice?
I'll let Madeline speak to that, because I wouldn't have the history about
that. Everybody does it a bit differently, but for the communities that the Oldman River Regional Services Commission works with, it's not uncommon to have a fringe district established. Typically, the intermunicipal development plan doesn't get into lists of uses that are not allowed. It's more high level at that policy level, right? Saying the intent is to be agricultural, the intent is for, sometimes there's certain areas that are identified for, we're going to allow an industrial commercial node here, but it doesn't typically get into uses. So I think the way the county has expressed it is been from administration's perspective that they feel that the fringe district isn't necessary within their land use bylaw. But I think the concern I still have is that fringe district, the implementation of the policies, the IMDP through the fringe district was decided on by the councils at the time that the IMDP was agreed upon, and that decision really should be made at that level rather than at the administration level, would be my opinion.
All right, so it would appear, unfortunately, that at this moment in time, we're going to be at loggerheads over this. So I think it's best to be prepared for that. So what is the dispute mechanism in the IMDP currently? What is that exactly? How does that work?
So I can't tell you that I've gone through it personally with the community, but I'll just outline the steps as they're in the IMDP. So it's basically stating that a municipality, if they identify an issue related to the plan that may result in a serious dispute, they should approach the IDP plan committee to call a meeting of the committee to discuss the issue. Prior to the meeting, each municipality, through its administration, must ensure that the facts of the issue have been investigated and clarified. The committee should discuss the issue with the intent to seek a resolution by consensus. And then, as I stated before, if they can't do that, then it goes to the appropriate chief elected officer to arrange a joint meeting of the two councils. So the first step is an IDP committee meeting, which obviously has some members of the county council and some members of the City of Brooks council. And then if an agreement can't be reached there, then it would go to a meeting of both councils. And then if an agreement can't be reached there, that's when it would go to municipal affairs.
Okay. So our next opportunity for the IDP is ours, but that's canceled, if I remember reading my instruct right. So, and they want to do second and third reading on what dates?
The 23rd.
Of September.
Yes, correct.
So there is no IDP opportunity before that.
It would have been today.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, Alan?
Thank you through the chair to mayor and council. And just a question for Madeline. The dispute resolution process though would kick in after they've implemented something. Is that correct? Or can it be done before?
No, it can be done before. So this process that I just outlined is in the IMDP. So that process can be done whenever. The process through 690 of the Municipal Government Act, which goes straight to the municipal affairs dispute resolution, with the municipal affairs staff manage that. That would be done if they adopted the land use bylaw and you felt that was not appropriate, then that's when the MGA process could begin. But the IDP process can come whenever.
So further to that, then we could probably call a special meeting of the IMDP before September 23rd. Has to be quick, mind you.
Okay. All right. So, with all due respect to the county's response on some of these things, I just I just see down the road where we will have a direct conflict when on the utilities is a huge one. So they're saying that they're going to be allowed, whatever they allow, they'll allow in this area, which means we could have the same conglomeration of different collection systems, different utility systems provided under whatever without any say at all. And then some poor council in 10 or 15 years is going to inherit that as the city grows. And that's the exact intent of what we're trying to do. So I'm really I'm at a loss for how they're approaching this. So I would propose, if someone would recommend it, and I think we can do it from here, is for us to initiate the IMDP dispute process concurrently with another meeting of staff to say that this is the direction. Do we have kind of Do we agree on that? And then I think, and I think maybe following the outcome of that, then we have to be prepared to step up for whatever dispute has to happen, which is very unfortunate because we have something that works, which is we're going to incur costs as a result of going further. I don't understand that in any way, shape, or form. Okay, so I just want to go, does anyone have any specific, I think we should just quickly, if there's some specific things, the utility ones for me is a big deal. I don't see how that, there has to be a way for us to be able to comment and have some say on how they're designed. So I don't buy that that somehow speeds things up. Yeah, it might make it 2 weeks quicker here for someone, but it's going to take tens of thousands of dollars, maybe hundreds of thousands of dollars to fix it in 10 years. It doesn't make any sense whatsoever. So is there any other comments specifically about some of the kind of specific questions and responses? And because I think that'll help staff and help guide that. I don't think there's an issue, a haystack or a grain bin or some other non-permanent structure. I have no problem with that. So can they say notwithstanding, or however you guys plan these things to allow that, if we didn't do a good enough job of allowing it before? I don't see a problem. It's the permanent buildings, I think, that we would have issues with, the where and big and how they're located. The things that were not included as well, I know, Dan, did you put your hand up? Yeah, just let me touch on because there's the part here where it says, although agricultural operation was previously permitted use in the fringe, the definition of that use did not include feed mills, grain mills, abattoirs, anhydrous ammonia storage, fertilizer plants, which is part of the county's definition of agriculture. Is that correct?
Well, they have multiple definitions for agriculture. So agriculture, agricultural processing.
Sorry,
and
agriculture operation is how you've got it put here.
Right. So that was the old definition.
Okay.
So now they've split it into agricultural processing and agricultural regulated. We were concerned about those because they have those other parts of their definition. So they did move those from permitted to discretionary.
Okay, so they are all discretionary now. Okay.
Yeah, except, yeah.
Well, the one again that concerns me is the pit and quarry. But we did talk about that, and it was, I thought, consensus on minimum 1,000 meters. So I think that one should be definitely one. But my other concern is, even though it's moved into discretionary, it doesn't help us at all. If they're going to do something, we really don't have a say if they approve it in discretionary, right?
Yeah, there's appeals and things that could happen, but I'm not sure what but I don't understand either. I think, and I think actually even the distance is important, but Norm's point about the traffic that type of activity would create potentially is, depending on how the road network is set up, could be significant problem or a significant issue for us in the future. So, would it be, it wouldn't be, and I'll ask Madeline this question. So, I kind of understand that they want this one district and it makes it easier for them. So can there not be exceptions to that district in a defined area that we already have in the referral area or whatever, in the IMDP area? Can they not just allow exceptions to that rule that would clean up this thing? Would that not be a proposal we could give them?
Yeah, and one way to do that is through an overlay. So you could have the district, and then you'd have the fringe overlay over top that had further restrictions. So, and actually the way the fringe district was written before kind of had a little bit of this because it had certain uses that were allowed, permitted or discretionary near Brooks, but then different for some of the other communities like Dutchess and Rosemary. So they actually already had that written into the fringe district. So you can definitely write it that way.
So maybe that should be part of our approach as well with staff, is that give them an in-between proposal of kind of going all back to fringe or trying to, meet the spirit of what they're trying to say if we're trying to, in fact, actually streamline some of those things, we can create that opportunity to do that in an overlay district. So maybe we should propose, rather than only just be opposed to something, can we propose that type of solution that doesn't really create, you know, again, in the spirit of trying to get rid of conflict in the future. So maybe we should build that into what we talk about both at the IMDP meeting and at the staff meeting that you have. Is that another reasonable consideration? Okay. So I'm curious about their reason for not removing the pit or the quarry. Do they actually have areas in the urban fringe, the fringe district that could be like a gravel pit or a quarry right now?
I don't think they have any locations specifically in mind. In speaking with Jeff Tiffin, he mentioned that he feels the need to have that kind of infrastructure close to a municipality so that it is accessible for use when you require, you know,
What are we doing now?
I'm not sure. I believe we.
I believe we get it from somewhere.
Yes, exactly.
So I, you know, again, yeah, well, you know, it would be nice if I didn't have to haul my garbage and put it in a barrel. I could just dump it out on the sidewalk, but I guess we don't do that either. Sorry for being flip, but I find those arguments to be not very practical. Go ahead, John.
Yes, Your Honor. They have a pit quarry right out here on the Lake Road now already.
Yeah, but outside of our urban fringe, though.
Yeah, it's right on it. And I think there's more along that roadway that they'd like to get to, even across Lake Nora Road, because there's a lot of gravel out there. So I think they're maybe thinking that there could be one that's even closer than that one.
Okay. Okay, and maybe I'll ask staff, or Alan or Madeline, are there things that you want us to specifically discuss that we haven't discussed already? Or are we comfortable? Go ahead,
If I
Alicia.
can speak, I think from my understanding, our concerns is potentially having an overlay on the Ag General District for the fringe area. And in the agricultural buildings, potentially rewording it so that permanent buildings, permanent agricultural buildings would be a discretionary use, but that non-permanent we could remain as permitted uses. You have a concern with utilities also being permitted and would prefer those to be discretionary, and the pits and quarries. Those were my understanding, as well as the solar panels.
Yeah, and I mean, even, you know, the things, bed and breakfast and boat launch, I guess, I don't know what they would do there, but even campground, I mean, depending on location again, these are the things that, and I know it's discretionary, but to Dan's point, I'm curious why they just won't consider a conversation about those things versus just imposing it. Because I feel right now that this is being imposed on us versus a consideration for joint planning that area. So, okay, so I think on the rest, I think we're comfortable. To the point about the 1,000 meters, and so to your point, Madeline, we don't know if that'll actually be included in second or third reading at this point, right? We don't know that. So I mean, I guess that's part of your discovery at your meeting.
Sorry to interrupt there. So they did actually change that to 1,000 meters in the red copy version that they had at the public hearing.
Okay. But I think to Norm's point, how do we include the impacts of something like that otherwise? And I know the AUC deals with some of those things at for a solar thing, but I don't think that's a foregone conclusion. If it doesn't fit the land use, regardless, for a number of other community reasons, that should still be a consideration as well. So how does that work? Because isn't a pit or a quarry, there's a different, is that only approved at the local level, or is there some other levels that's considered?
I'm not sure. I would have to look into that.
Because, because if there's no immediate environmental impact, there's no need for another assessment, in my understanding. So until there's some reason for elevating it to another approval, that would not happen, correct? So they could just have that expansion and we get to live with the consequences no matter what. So again, I think those things should be things we should be planning together and working on together. All right. So Alan, from the CEO's perspective, are you comfortable with what we need to do in the coming days and weeks?
Thank you. Yes, comfortable in what we have to do, and like the lease that we're giving them an option. The one question that I do have is with regards to the solar. Did you want those right out of that area, or just still a discretionary use?
Well, I guess their answer was, how did they answer this one again, which I just found the.
I can actually speak to that.
Okay, go ahead.
In their report to their council, they mentioned specifically the one north of the highway,
Yeah.
and mentioned that they actually forewent any public process for that because they were told the AUC, I think it's the AUC, already did the public engagement, so they didn't do a public engagement and just did it as took it to IMDP to rezone it, and that was it. So that was their feeling, that because they didn't even do public engagement, why would there be a need to put it in a new district, because the public engagement's done through the AUC.
Well, I think depending on the location of it and the size of it and all of those things, I think and everything in that fringe area should be this council should have the consideration to do their own and to consider it in a different light. To have it removed from us arbitrarily is, again, it's an imposition of a rule that might not suit the purpose every time. And I think the spirit of these joint agreements is that you do come to a joint settlement, you come to a joint decision, and to remove that from us, I think creates, again, it sets us up for a conflict where we have no choice but to move past a simple meeting but have to go directly to court. I think I had Dan and then Alan. Go ahead. Oh, you're good? Okay, Alan.
I think what they do have the solar as a discretionary use, so that would come forward. We would have some say in that. And I believe, I believe that they can or do have their public hearings now. I don't know because I believe there was one west of Brooks that had an SDAB hearing, if I'm correct, that I believe was fairly controversial, but I don't know if it had the AUC approval before that hearing.
Right. Okay, so, but I still think, that we should have the opportunity under the old rules. I think we had the opportunity to be engaged in that discussion. I wasn't really aware that they bypassed their own public hearing process. Okay. All right. Do we have a go forward then, Alan? Yes. Okay. All right. Thank you very much for the work, Alan. When did, just out of curiosity, when did the county, so the first reading was, what day was the first reading again?
The first reading was on August 5th.
Okay. All right. Okay. Thank you very much for that. Thanks, Madeline, for tuning in. And now that you're all one color, it's easy to see you. So, yeah, the sun is a wonderful thing, except when it comes to cameras. All right. Thank you very much again for being here with us. All right. That takes us to our next item, which is Alicia again on the Beautification and Trail Program.
Thank you, through the chair to mayor and council. This year, we presented council with a 5-year beautification and trails program demonstrating some options and direction to move forward over the next 5 years. We do update this plan yearly. Recently, staff was notified by Alberta Environment that the work in and immediately around the shorelines of Meadowbrook Pond is not possible due to environmental restrictions. You may recall we had discussed potentially going through with a dock system. And this year's selection of trail along Castles Road north of the museum from Duke of Sutherland to the Kiwanis Campground has an abundance of shallow utilities that have to be hydro-excavated at an hourly rate. The trail was to continue through to the rest area and new RV sani dump. With the different options for use of the old rodeo grounds and the RV sani dump may stay in the same location and the rest area may not move ahead. In light of what has arisen, staff would like to carry forward the 2020 budget and revise the 5-year plan to be brought forward to council in 2022. This will allow staff to review the 5-year plan and determine new options for council's consideration. Therefore, staff recommends carrying forward the beautification and trail program budget.
Okay, all right. Questions or comments? Norm, go ahead, and then Bill.
The first question that I would have is, what are the environmental restrictions that they are referring to around Meadowbrook Pond? Because I know that there's lots of other ponds around the countryside that have pathways around them.
I'm not sure the actual specific regulations, but they won't allow us to put a dock system through the pond itself or altering around the pond, like the shoreline.
Is that because it's a wetland, or what is it? Is it classified as a wetland
Yes, yeah,
for the provincial purposes?
yeah, I believe so, yeah.
Now, if you want to talk about red tape removal, let's talk about that one. All right, Bill, go ahead.
Well, that was actually the question I had, but I presume what they're talking about is just the dock was the only problem. There should be no problem with the path around the lake on the outside of it or back from the water so far? Or does that
I'm just
sort of
gonna
what is-
ask, Don, do you, because I wasn't part of the conversations with environment, is it the trail around the pond as well, or just through the pond? So just through the pond,
Okay,
yeah.
so there's no problem going around the pond is, because we've got, one side is almost already around the pond,
Right,
so.
yes.
Okay, that's good, thank you.
All right. Any other questions at this point? Okay, so to the recommendation to carry forward the entire 2021 budget and to reset a plan in 2022, is everybody okay with that? Okay. Bill, you'll make that recommend? Yeah, you're good. So we can just, this one, we need a recommendation, I guess, to council for this. Is that what you want to do? Or is we're just accepting this?
Through the chair to mayor and council, this can be just a direction to staff, and we'll bring
Okay.
it forward at next budget.
Yeah, go ahead, Norm.
You know, when it says that the hydro excavated with the shallow utilities, how often is that ever done? I don't think I've ever seen hydrovac trucks around that area, or am I wrong?
It's quite frequent on projects if there are shallow utilities in the location that the utility companies will require that you hydro excavate, just so that you don't end up breaking their lines.
All right, so everybody's comfortable then with the recommendation? So we just do a carry forward? Is that all we have to do? It'll just be, we don't have to have a council motion or any of this stuff, do we? No, okay, good. All right, good. So the recommendation is accepted, so we'll continue on with that. And you guys will figure out a new plan in 2022 to update that. All right, Shelley, I think. Elka Investments, go ahead.
Thank you through the chair to mayor and council. So on August 24th, Vasil Papansky addressed council committee regarding a few issues that he felt negatively affected his 11-unit residential complex, which his company Elka Investment owns. So administration had responded to each of his concerns when they originally came in. But this information, we've gathered some information which is being presented for further clarification for council. So we've broken it down into the issues that he addressed while he was here. So first is water meter changes. In October of 2020, the description of the owner's water charges were changed to reflect that he had a water meter with a 10 times multiplier. So it was basically just a change on his utility bill. His meter settings were already correct, therefore there was no change to his billing moving forward. I think that we could have communicated this a little better to him because it was a bit confusing. Following this, the owner approached Public Works to have a new meter installed as he felt his meter was reading high. So the utilities department consulted with him and they installed a new meter in March of 2021. The new meter, when the new meter was entered into the city's billing software, the number of base rates defaulted to 1 base rate. And before we sent out the first bill, administration forgot to override that and enter the 11 base rates representing the number of dwelling units. So Mr. Poponsky did receive one billing that reflected just 1 base rate. So this was corrected on the next bill back to the 11 base rates pursuant to the bylaw in the following billing period. The previous bill, though, which was lower, because it was an administrative error, the city did not go back and increase that or charge him the additional 10 base rates for that period. So the next issue was the utility base rates. So our utility rates bylaw, which is bylaw 2023, it specifies that each residential dwelling is to be charged a residential base rate for water, sewer, garbage, and recycling. So the owner believes that base rates should be charged based on the number of water meters or connections as opposed to the number of dwelling units. So just a little bit of the methodology in this. The number of water meters in some multifamily dwellings, including townhouses and duplexes, fourplexes, any other multifamily, are not always consistent. Some of them do have individual water meters for each dwelling unit. So if the city were to charge their base rates based on water meters, it wouldn't be treating all multifamily complexes consistently, resulting in unfair and inequitable utility billings. So dwelling unit is the basis of these charges in the bylaw, so that the charges are fair and equitable. So furthermore, just a little bit about the base rates. The theory is that they are collected to help recover the capital costs of the city's water distribution system and enable the city to replace infrastructure once it has reached or its useful life has expired. So this should be the responsibility of all utility users. So having just 1 base rate for a multifamily dwelling to charge for just 1 base rate for each service, water, sewer, garbage, and recycling, it would have these properties paying the same amount as a single family dwelling would pay, which would of course be inequitable because there's more dwelling units in the multifamily units. So that's just, hopefully that clarifies a few things there. The next concern was garbage bin concerns. So the City of Brooks contracts garbage collection for multifamily complexes. So the charge for that service would be the same regardless of the size of his bin. So just to clarify that. So there were concerns about our utility rates bylaw legitimacy. It was stated that the city's bylaws were wrong and that we couldn't charge in the manner that we have been billing. So the Municipal Government Act, Section 34(1), clearly states that we have the duty, the city has a duty to supply a municipal utility to any parcel that it is adjacent to the service, to the services, based on the terms costs, or charges which are established by council. So we have established these charges and costs in the city's utility rates bylaw 2023, which was given 3 readings and passed by council on December 21st, 2020. Next, sidewalk concerns. So the sidewalk in front of this complex was designed so that water can drain towards the boulevard and the back alley. Although there were some sections of the sidewalk replaced to improve drainage, the remainder of the sidewalk did not require replacement. The city also removed the trees that were on the boulevard in front of the complex upon Mr. Popinski's request. To improve the street drainage, the curb and gutter were lowered by up to 14 centimeters towards the catch basin north of this property as well. And finally, there is a follow-up letter that's attached to this memo, and that was received after Mr. Popinski's appearance in front of council, dated September 1st, 2020. And in that, which wasn't mentioned at the time he came here, he did ask about section 414 of the bylaw and noted that we must test the water meter, So the bylaw does state that the city may test the meter if it is found, and if it is found that the meter is providing faulty readings, it will be replaced at the city's, replaced by the city at the city's cost. If it is reading correctly, the utility customer must pay the costs for the tests. So that is just some information to clarify some of his concerns, and administration recommends that this clarification just be accepted as information.
All right, thank you very much. Do we have questions or comments on this? Anyone? Yeah, go ahead, John.
Yeah, it doesn't look like we've done anything wrong except for the one time about charging for the base rate, and we corrected that there. But otherwise, I think we just followed the rules on this, right?
Okay, all right, anybody else? Yeah, Joel, go ahead.
Does he understand that he could have his own, because he has 11 units, that they could all have separate meters and then the residents would pay that instead of himself being charged at 10 times 10?
So I think I'm going to defer this question to Dawn. There could be some concerns. I'm not sure it's practical to install separate meters in a multifamily complex like that. So I don't know if that discussion has happened with him.
I keep forgetting, Don, anybody who's listening probably didn't get to hear anything you said, so maybe the next time you'll have to come to the mic. Next time, yeah, we won't go back there, but, so just to phrase is that it's the practical installation of the service, having one service instead of multiple services to a apartment building, correct? It's just a practical thing, okay. Joel, did you have something else? Anybody else? Go ahead, Bill.
Yeah, there is some places that do have a meter to each one, and that has been done. They have to pay for that themselves. Still only one bill. I'd go to the bigger building, say it's a sixplex or whatever. There is some, but they had to put the meters in themselves, and they have to pay on that same bill. It's only one bill goes to the building, so that's something the owner would have to do on his own. Nothing to do with the city. I know there's 2 or 3 of them around that have done that, simply because they make the tenants pay that are sloppy users, or big users, or wasters, or whatever, so. But other than that,
Right, and that's at the discretion of when they build the sixplex.
well,
or-
actually, when they build it or whatever, yeah, but there's not very much of that, because it's pretty costly, and then you'd have to turn around, they have to read their own meters, and then you have to bill tenants separately on it, and there's some of them do that, but there's only one bill goes to the tenant
Still,
from the main line.
yeah,
from the main main.
okay. Anything else?
Just,
Go ahead,
just
yeah.
to clarify as well, even if that were to happen, the charges would still be the same because there would be one base rate for each dwelling unit. So it just would alleviate him from having to pay the one bill and collect that from his renters.
Anybody else? Go ahead, Dan.
So based on what you provided here, and I don't see where the city has done anything other than that one issue, just like Councillor Petrie has said. So if we take this as information, are you going to be, or somebody going to be providing Mr. Poplinski with information as we have here, so that he understands?
We certainly will communicate with Mr. Popinski.
Okay, anything else? I do have one thing, and we're going to deal with it today. But, you know, I think when the city looks going forward, like I said, I know we're going to solve it today. I think the idea, though, that in a multi-family units where, particularly where the intent is to try to provide some sort of density and some potential affordability issues, that we should maybe look at how the per unit price going forward is applied to multifamily. And the only reason I say that is not, you know, we've created a system where everyone is equal, but that doesn't mean that everyone has equity. So, while I appreciate where we are, and I don't think we did anything wrong here in terms of this particular unit, I think it may be something for the future council to look at, is you know, do we do it strictly for fairness in billing, or do we actually do it because it's fair? So, and I don't know the answer to that. I know, you know, we've often dealt with the issue of, you know, who creates what garbage and how much and volumes and things and how there's some equity. And I know there's some practical things to that, but because housing is, you know, I think is going to be a bigger issue going forward for us as we move forward, that there might be, it might be worthwhile to just have a look at that. And whether you change anything or not isn't the point, but it's always good to look at why and how you do things. And I think in the terms of how a minimum charge that is the same as a single family housing, I think should be examined a little bit closer. But anyway, that's something for the future. Go ahead, Norm.
But in that concept, and I remember, I don't know, a few years back, Shelley was nice enough to bring to us the water usage for each one of the council members here. And in that situation, I was like, for my house, I was like 50% lower than most of the other councilors at that time. And some councilors used over that amount. So I don't know how, you know, even on a residential basis, how you could justify that one with the needs of the distribution centers, infrastructures needing to be replaced and repaired on an ongoing basis to come out to an equitable format for everyone. I think that would be a very, very difficult, and it's the same as garbage. I know even with garbage, if my garbage is picked up once a month, because I always bring it into my yard, I'd be shocked that I even have it picked up once in a month. So how would you rate that equity amongst households? I mean, you almost have to come out with a carte blanche pricing for almost everything. That's just the way I see it, and I don't know, the only thing that you could do is possibly lower the rates, you know, for everybody, rather than just trying to do it for a specific group of people. And then you'd have to go back and find out whether or not all your costs are covered for the utility that you're trying to utilize.
That's a fair comment. But that's why I've always been a proponent too on even the pricing of water. I don't think we do that right yet. I don't think we encourage conservation, and that our base rate, our base amount is too high, and we should be charging higher rates as we use more. I think that kind of principle should apply. And so, anyway, I think it should be a consideration. So when we think about the work that goes into one service for 11 units or one service for 50 units, does that provide any relief for us? Is that fair? And those are the things that I think we should just consider, because I agree with you that, you have to have some sort of kind of base piece, but it should be equitable. And I'm not sure that our current one is equitable along a lot of lines. And I know through budget and through strategic planning, we've relooked at pricing and how we price our utilities and how we try to assign a more, create that more value for money proposition where you have a direct cost to a direct service. And again, I think in this instance, we have to do the same thing. And whether we land in the same place, that's fair, but I think for us to not reconsider it from time to time, is a bit of a dereliction of duty. So I think we have to look at that because things change. Joel, did you have something? No? Okay. Yeah, Bill, go ahead.
Well, I don't know, I think that we have already got the base rate set. Where you got your garbages there's a set rate for every unit. Your water's a base rate already for each unit, so each family's a unit, so the sewer's the same thing, so everything is recycled, so everything is already set there on a base rate, so I don't know what you're gonna change unless you wanna give them a favor somewhere, but they're all using the same as a single-family house, except for the watering of the lawns and whatever, and it depends what they have, so I absolutely don't see anything wrong with the system that's there now, and it's been a lot of work done on it over the years, and I think it's fair. There is base rates already established that are working very well.
And you won't have to worry about me talking about it the next time around. So I thought I should get my piece in there before I go. But anyway, I know we do review this, but I think that's my view, and that's it. And so you guys, whoever's here next time can decide on a course of action, and they might leave it exactly the same, and that's fine. All right, so I think as terms of the explanation goes, I think we're all in agreement that while we might have some sympathy for his issue, everything was followed, and under all our current policies, everything was done the way it was supposed to be done. So I think we're fine to hand that off and to send that explanation to the landowner and go from there. Is that, we agree to that? Excellent. Okay. Now it looks like we just have the Amy Romans show. So Amy, do you want to go ahead and get started? Thank you very much, Shelley, by the way.
Thank you. Through the chair to mayor and council, we've recently undertaken a review of all of our city policies to ensure they reflect current practice. So the first one up today is the media release policy that has received minor updates, including allowing the communications officer the ability to initiate media releases with the appropriate manager reviewing the release, removing the media release template from the policy as it changes frequently, and updating the list of who receives City of Brooks media releases. So just to clarify, you'll see member-based circulations. We send ours out via email, and people have to opt in to receive them. So that list would include various media outlets. If council has any questions, I'd be pleased to answer them. Otherwise, my recommendation is that this policy be forwarded to council for formal approval.
All right, thanks, Amy. Are there any updates? Yes, go ahead, John.
Amy, just to clarify number 6 for me, media releases shall be distributed to the following, and then you have the City of Brooks website, and then you don't have the paper or the radio station in there. Just explain that to me.
Yeah, through the chair to Councillor Petrie, that they would be included in the member-based circulations, yeah.
Right, because we're not allowed to send out mass emails without permission, correct? Right.
Okay, yeah, well, one other thing too, just about media releases too, like when we have an emergency, let's say there's a water break or a snow removal, we have the ability to get that out right away there too, right? Yeah. And I think it has to be signed off by 2 people, right? The communications officer and the CEO, right? I just, my
the
point
ap-
here is,
I think
I
it's
just
the
want to make
manager.
sure that the public is aware of something. And I'll give you another example there too. For example, the cemetery there was a big buzz on social media about that. That was all wrong, whatever, just so we can kind of correct something in an instant.
Yeah, go ahead, Amy.
Through the chair to Councillor Petrie, depending on the situation, there may be a media release done up, and depending on which department it affects, the communications officer would do a media release, have that manager review it. In some other instances, like a water break, the Public Works and Utility Manager would contact our communications officer, and for things like that, we would more likely just put them on Facebook or possibly contact the radio stations.
Okay, perfect, thank you.
All right. Any issues here? Okay, so this one is, these are changes that have to go to council, so get a recommendation to council. Dan, thank you. All in favor? All right, that is recommended. Go ahead, Amy. City crest and logo policy.
Thank you. Through the chair to mayor and council. The city crest and logo policy has also received minor updates. So we've added the city logo, which is the City of Brooks text, to the policy. The crest is the crest that you see behind Mayor Morishita right now. There's a little bit of confusion between logo and crest. So requiring that all requests for use of the city logo or crest be submitted to the CAO for approval. Previously, people using the logo for souvenirs did not require this. Additionally, anyone that wants to use a city photo would also require approval. And if the request is approved, the requester will be provided with the city branding guidelines to ensure the logo, crest, and photos are displayed correctly. So again, if there are any questions, I'd be pleased to answer them. Otherwise, I'm recommending that this be forwarded to council as well.
Okay. All right, John.
Me again, Amy. If somebody uses our crest or logo without our permission, what do we do, or how do we handle that?
Through the chair to Councillor Petrie, it doesn't usually happen too often, although if we are aware of it or are made aware, we will contact them and ask them to either remove it or stop using it.
Or ask for permission to use it. Okay, John.
Amy, did I ever give you my original of the crest?
I don't believe so.
Oh, I have it for sale.
Brooks buy and sell, maybe.
Okay, bidding starts. All right. Amy, does this policy, sorry, did somebody, yeah, go ahead, Norm.
Well, I know that I can speak to the crest policies when I had my own business because I inadvertently used the crest on products. And I did get approached by the city to ask permission, but the city did give permission. And the whole reason being is because a lot of times what somebody might put on a garment might not be quite appropriate with what the crest is actually intended for. So I think that is probably the main reasons as to why we want to get the CAO's approval. And the same for pictures and whatnot. I think it's critically important because, like I say, it could be misused by someone, and then we would have at least the authority to stop the production of said items.
All right, just a question, anybody else have a question, sorry? Okay, Amy, what about the extension of our brand? So whether, does the same policy apply to our tourism pieces, our economic development? Do we have the extension of the policies on those? And I know those are, some of those are jointly held, and but do we, are we gonna kind of try to be consistent with that?
Through the chair to Mayor Morishita, the Brooks Region and Brooks Region Tourism, for sure the Brooks Region has their own branding guidelines. I'm not sure about Brooks Region Tourism. They aren't included in this policy, but I believe they may not have a formal policy, but they do follow the same requirements that they require people to basically ask permission if they're going to be using
Yeah.
their logos.
Okay, good. All right. Can I get someone to move? Okay, thanks, Norm, to recommend this to council. All in favor? Opposed, if any? That's carried. Okay, next, Amy is up on the credit card policy. I never got one of those. They didn't have the policy fixed yet. Go ahead, Amy.
Thank you. Through the chair to mayor and council. The credit card policy has been updated to reflect the current practice of city staff and the use of city credit cards. So the current policy that is being changed discusses expenses of council and the CAO. However, that's addressed in the reimbursement of expenses policy. So this new policy, draft policy, just goes through the process of that managers use when they are using city credit cards or reconciling their statements. So again, I'd be happy to answer any questions. Otherwise, I'm recommending that this be forwarded to council.
All right, thank you, Amy. Are there any questions about this policy? Looks pretty straightforward. Okay, can I get someone to recommend? Bill, thank you very much. All in favor? Okay, that moves on. So Recreation and Parks Board bylaw 21/15, go ahead.
Thank you. Through the chair to mayor and council. We've recently updated the Rec and Parks Board bylaw to state that the youth member must be at least 14 years of age as recommended by the board in April. Other changes made are that the board is responsible for monitoring and implementing the 10-year Rec and Parks Master Plan, which is subject to the city's budget, as per the recommendation in the master plan, and they will also review and award grant funding as directed by council. This was added because of the Recreation User Group grant. However, the clause has been kept general, just in case in the future if there are any other grants or grant programs that may be allocated in the future. The final change is clauses have been added to permit virtual meetings and virtual voting. We are going to get a little bit more clarification on the virtual voting. Obviously, virtual meetings and virtual voting have been happening throughout the COVID-19 pandemic. But we just want to make sure that this would be permitted moving forward as well. So if there are any changes to that section, that will obviously be reflected in the bylaw that is presented to council. So again, I would be happy to answer any questions. Otherwise, recommending that this bylaw is forwarded to council.
All right, any questions or comments? I just, on the virtual meetings and virtual voting, I know that, you know, when I read how the special meetings are called and how I have a slight concern about the ability of a simple majority of the board to allow a vote to occur with a simple majority of the vote and thus quorums established by that simple majority, if that's how I read the bylaw. I'm a bit concerned that our boards and committees could have essentially a subgroup majority of the board call special meetings, have a virtual vote, and then that becomes the recommendation. So I do think this needs to be reconsidered at another point, just because I think within the rules that we have, and I assume these meeting rules are probably apply across all our committees, I'm guessing, and I assume that these changes will happen across all of them. So I do have a concern that that can happen. So I don't believe, and probably a simple fix of that would be that I don't think you should be able to call a special meeting with a simple majority of members. You'll have to figure out whether it's 2/3 or some other way to ensure that you have enough board members that are together so that you do actually get a majority of the members voting in favor of something as you would at a regular meeting. I think that's a really important consideration. And although we never like to think the worst of anyone, we've all been part of situations that kind of got out of control from time to time or heard about them, and our rules shouldn't allow that to happen. So I would suggest that before we change this, that be changed first. And I don't know what the proper thing is. That, like, I guess the ones that, most of the ones are fine. except the virtual meeting and the special meetings, because technology allows it to happen so quickly, and with a simple majority of a board of 11, and you have 6 who agree to have it, so they have their meeting they say, we're gonna have a virtual meeting in 10 minutes. And they know, you know what I mean? Like, that's the kind of thing that I don't wanna see happen. Or we're gonna have a meeting tonight after 7, and I know 5 of you can't come, but 6 of us can, so we're gonna deal with it. I don't think that's not the intent, so we shouldn't allow it. Joel, and then Dan, and then Alan.
I believe, section 5 of 502, it says it convene within, or I guess within 48 hours.
Yeah, so you could literally.
Yeah.
You could literally say, send an email out and say, we're having a special meeting
Yeah.
in half an hour. We need 6 people to show up, and if the board, and this is, this is just a safeguard.
Yeah. So I would agree.
Could
like-
manipulate it and say, I know that there's 6 gonna show up, and I know we'll get a positive vote, because those 5 can't log on. Do you know what I mean? Like, we shouldn't allow it to happen, because the reason the board's there are to provide governance.
Absolutely.
And they shouldn't be excluded by circumstance from doing that job, so.
So that,
Dan
even
and
that
then-
should be looked at.
Yeah, Dan and then Alan's.
Yeah, just to go along with that, I was thinking maybe one way around it is to change that 48 hours. You'd have to give, if you give a week's notice or something for a special meeting. If that makes sense, I don't know if
Yeah.
that's practical or not, but it gives the members more time to arrange for it or be prepared for it. But, and if you go in with a quorum, maybe in this situation where it happens in other ones, we gotta have at least 2/3 present.
Or something, yeah,
Yeah.
okay, yeah, I don't know. Alan, do you have any suggestions there?
Yeah, through the chair to mayor and council, I think, how you call a special meeting is what you'd have to look at. Even like with council, you can do that too. You can call a special meeting and have 4 people show up legally, and 3 would be enough to carry something, whereas with the full council, you'd need 4 to carry it. So you maybe want to look at the way that notice is done and the waiver of special notices. Look at that, and that's what we do with council as well.
Okay, so I guess to that point, I guess we can go ahead and do what you want to do, but that, the next thing we do should fix that chunk, just to ensure that your scenario right there, that's the scenario I'm worried about, that an actual minority of a board could pass a resolution or a direction. And that's not the intent of having a special meeting. A special meeting is to allow business to move forward, but it shouldn't be allow a minority of the board to determine a direction. So if we fix that, I think that's fine. So any of the other rules, I think any of the other changes we're good with? Does anybody have any? Okay, so so the recommendations that Amy's making, can I get someone to make that, Joel? Recommendation to council, so all in favor of that? And then you can come back with a change to deal, so that a simple, so a minority of the board can't make that direction, however you determine this best. Okay, perfect. Community standards bylaw. Amy.
Okay, last one for today. Through the chair to mayor and council, the community standards bylaw received some amendments, including adding the Provincial Administrative Penalties Act throughout the bylaw when it talks about violation tickets. The definition of weekday was changed Monday to Friday, and weekend, Saturday, Sunday, and holidays. Previously, Saturday was included in the definition of a weekday. We've added a subsection that addresses the requirement for an owner or occupier of a premises to repair all access points to private property. This is sometimes addressed in development agreements. However, to ensure consistency, it was added to the bylaw. And then we've just incorporated past amendments into one bylaw. So again, any questions, I would be happy to answer them. Also recommending that this is forwarded to council.
All right, thanks, Amy. Dan, go ahead.
So a couple things, and I don't know if you can answer this, Amy, or maybe someone else in chamber here. I had 2 downtown businessmen contact me in the last few days about the property here on First, and with people entering it and even though it's a vacant property and the unsightliness of it. So with these changes, especially, I'm reading this about the access points to private property, does that cover off when people are breaking into it and now there's a hole that they're climbing through or whatever? Do we have enough clout in this bylaw that our bylaw officers and/or the RCMP can deal with that? Because I think some of the business people downtown here have some pretty big concerns about what's happening in that building.
Sure, through the chair to Councillor Klein. This new section is more so addressing not sidewalks, because we repair sidewalks, but access points where you would drive. So I believe I understand the building you are referring to. We continuously have issues with that building. There's another section in the bylaw, I can't remember off the top of my head, where it talks about vacant buildings and what you need to do to secure them. So we've had multiple times where our officers have noticed the holes to get in the building or the windows or whatever they may be, contacted the owner. Then the owner gives permission for our staff as well as the RCMP to clear the building. And then the owner is responsible for, again, boarding up the hole or whatever it may be. So we already do have provisions in this bylaw. It's just for some reason that building is really attractive to people to try to get into. But we have dealt with it numerous times with the clauses we already have in the bylaw.
Okay, thank you.
All right, any other questions on this one? Okay, can I get someone to recommend? Thank you, John Nesbitt. All in favor? Okay, that's recommended. All right, Councillor Klein, you wanted to talk about cardboard pickup. Go ahead.
Yeah, again, I was contacted on the weekend about wondering what is happening. And Councillor Goodenough had just kind of talked to me a little bit before the meeting as well. I think there's some confusion out there with the businesses of what we're doing. There's other companies that are running around trying to get businesses to sign up to take their cardboard. I think we need to be, we talked about communications earlier, I think we need to communicate to the businesses that we are looking at it, and there is a decision will be coming forward before year end, I hope. But some of these, like, they don't know what's going on and whether they should be signing up with someone else to pick their cardboard up or what. I don't think the communication has been, by what I'm hearing, relayed out good enough to the businesses that, hey, don't do anything yet. We're trying to formulate a plan of how to manage this, whether we go third party or not on a RFP. But they need to understand what's going on before they start signing up. And the other issue, and it's kind of not our issue, but the one business that contacted me, they got contacted by a firm earlier on this year when it first came out that we were going to discontinue. And the email that came out from this company, he was not happy because his business email, everybody's was on there. It was exposed to everybody. And he was upset that, but I said, well, that's not really our fault, but I think the point I'm trying to make is make sure that if we're doing that, that we're not getting everybody, we use the BCC or however we're sending messages out, that everybody doesn't get to see your email, whether it's personal or business. It shouldn't be out to the world to see. So, but definitely I think we have to do a better communication job to all the businesses that, hey, we're still trying to put a plan in place.
Okay, Alan, I'm gonna maybe let you update us on where we are and what the next steps are.
I guess a couple things there. First of all, they are going to bring something back at the council meeting, I believe, next week. They're still working on that, and to the point with the communication, we can send something out to these businesses, noting to them where we are at over and above, because not all of them listen to our meetings for sure.
Okay. And I think there was some confusion created by the Recycling Association by when they did their survey as well. And when, so yeah, but good point. We can't do enough communication. So I think Jordan's not in this meeting today, but we'll make sure communications get something out. And okay, good point. And we are going to be dealing with at least initially having a look at what our options are again, analyzed as soon as that's what's happening. Okay, perfect. All right, anything else? If not, I'm going to turn it over to our roving reporter there, Sandra Stanway. Go ahead, Sandra.
Thank you. I may have actually just got my answer, but I will ask the question anyway, please. Some municipal mayors are calling for vaccine passports, and I'm just wondering where the city does stand on this, please.
That's a good question, because we haven't discussed that yet, and we haven't put it on an agenda. So maybe is that something that we can talk about? We'll put it on an agenda. Okay?
Thank you.
We haven't had that opportunity, so Alan, maybe we'll make a note of that. And
We'll certainly add that to the next council agenda, and council can have a discussion whether they want to request that of the province.
okay, thank you. That's it. All right. With that, we're adjourned. Thanks, everybody, and enjoy the rest of your day.